everyone, welcome to another Underrated Film Saturday, and today I'm going to be looking into specifically a war film, a particular one that has come out relatively recently, and I think kind of got swept a little bit under the bus, unfortunately, because it came out during a time where movies aren't necessarily supposed to, at least by and large, be good. Like, it's really the month where Hollywood just hashes out whatever they can hash out, but it's not necessarily designed to be of good quality. It's basically the month of stinkers for Hollywood, and that's January. At least that's the case within the United States. It might be different within other countries. I'm not exactly sure how it works in, say, Europe or in Asia, but primarily within the United States, January is the month where films are not necessarily, at least, putting their best effort, because it's really supposed to be a time where everybody's sort of kind of relaxing and they're not really focusing on trying to create new interesting material. And this is the time when this film actually came out. And so I think that is why it did get a little bit, unfortunately, overlooked. And, despite the fact that it is obviously not, it's not like one of these Oscar films or, something that is super duper spectacular. But at the same time, it still, I think, offers a lot of interesting commentary, especially onto the subject matter that it is sort of addressing. So that film, as you can see by the title and hopefully thumbnail, is called Lone Survivor. And basically, what this film primarily follows is 4 Navy SEALs who are sent on a covert mission to take down basically a Taliban leader, and this guy's name is Ahmad Shahai. But basically, it primarily follows these 4 people because they are largely the main characters and sort of the driving force for the plot. So it only makes sense that they would be the people that we come to really know. Now, I think this film stems a little bit of criticism for the fact that it doesn't provide as much character development as some other films do, in particular some other war films, and I understand that, but I think it's not really necessarily supposed to be character driven. It's just supposed to be character relationship and plot driven, because you do overall get a sense of likability from these characters. It's just that they're not as in depth or as Shakespearean or whatnot. And I find it hilarious that some people think that, oh, it needs to be Shakespearean somehow. It's like, it's a war movie about going into Afghanistan. But basically, the interesting thing about this particular film also is the fact that it is based on something that actually happened. It is an actual event that occurred, and it's also based upon a nonfiction book, which actually I believe was written by one of the SEALs who was actually there. And I think also some other journalist, I think, helped him out a bit for writing the whole book. And what really, I think, sets this film apart is how they really highlight the struggle for these Navy SEALs to survive, because obviously things go haywire, like you would expect in primarily the majority of all war films, and really they are kind of outnumbered and basically sort of, I guess you could even say, outgunned as well. So it really is they're in like survival mode throughout this entire film. And the way it shows that, I think, is just so effective. And this is where I think filmmaking just really shines, because it allows you to take something visual. You don't need a bunch of hammy dialogue in order to get a really intriguing and interesting effect. And that's a lot of the times through the visuals. And this film does a really good job of utilizing those visuals. And it makes you feel like you're in the environment that these characters are in. Similar to something like Black Hawk Down, you feel like you're in that kind of environment. So that's, I think, something that's also really important to note. Although I think Black Hawk Down can be classified as a little bit more stylized, this is obviously a little bit more grounded, um, and uses less effects so much and focuses more on the sort of brutality, which Black Hawk Down does focus on too, but again, uh, a lot less, I think, spectacle, because again, it's primarily focusing on 4 people. I mean, as opposed to a whole uh, entire unit of soldiers. And I think when you look at the way in which the film is executed overall, and you look at primarily what it was trying to base itself off of, I think you can really see the the effects come off fairly well. Um, and you really do feel that there is this grit to it, um, that is primarily the environment in which you would expect Navy SEALs to constantly, at least when they're in the field, to be in. Um, and so I think that's really a driving force of this film that ultimately makes it work and actually makes it unique to a lot of other war-like films, because a lot of the times at least from my experience, you usually see groups of men sort of fighting together. Um, you see them constantly battling the enemy on the battlefield, and you know, um, you really do see it in that format. But here, it's primarily through the mountains and through the landscape, and the enemy it's not really clear even really where exactly the enemy is. I mean, they're constantly hiding, and I think that just creates such a more uh, intense effect, and creates a unique one at that. So again, I think obviously there's only so much that you can do with a war film, for people say, oh, it's not unique or blah 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 blah. But I think you can find, I think, some at least a good enjoyment from this film. Overall, all the characters are likable, and you want to see them make it. Um, Even if they're not that developed. I mean, these characters are not supposed to be Shakespearean. They're not supposed to have, these really grandiose kinds of personalities. I think they're just more supposed to be more down to earth kind of people, which is really what, I would imagine a lot of, Navy SEAL like characters would be like. They're just kind of like you and me, except they, have a very intense job, and a very sometimes secret job at that. I think sometimes Navy SEALs can't give out there. I'm not sure exactly of the rules, but I think from what I can tell, I don't think they're allowed to reveal their identity to a certain extent. Um, so at least publicly, until they're maybe no longer part of the military at least anymore, or part of the SEALs. But again, it gives you a very unique perspective. And the interesting thing too is I think a lot of what this film tries to utilize, you can probably see it being utilized in um, a film that's actually supposed to be coming out about the whole Benghazi uh, situation. So again, but obviously Benghazi is in a completely different format and is a little bit more battlefield oriented, a little bit more similar to Black Hawk Down, I would even say. But again, what I think is so, uh, what really also sells this film, I think, really well is the story, because overall the story is fascinating, and it takes various turns that you wouldn't really expect this film to take. So I think that's also something that's really important to note. And I like too that it doesn't try to paint a sort of one-sided picture like you have people that are within Afghanistan that do try to help and protect the at least one of the SEALs um, at one point. So again, there is a lot of things going on to make it indicate that the area is a lot more complex and less one-sided than some may believe. Um, so that's also, I think, that's something important to note, and really is also a driving force for the film as far as the plot. Uh, but I think that's really all I can say about it without really giving too much away. It is interesting, and I would really like too if more of these kinds of stories were used. I think there is a lot more of an emphasis, at least um, now, to try to make films that are sort of based off of true stories and real events. And I think there's a lot of things that people can identify with, at least when you're trying to base it off of something that actually happened. Um, and uh, there is a lot of, I think, heartbreaking moments within this particular film that you'll see, but there's also a lot of heart in it as well, and a lot of genuine effort. But I think that's really ultimately all I can say. However, if any questions, comments, concerns, be more than happy to answer them. Apologies, this video is being uploaded late. I unfortunately haven't had time to upload until today. I thought I wasn't going to have time till Monday, but luckily it'll all be good to go for up until Sunday's video. But until next time, everybody.